Well, joining us now is Robert Asselin, Senior Vice President of Policy at the Business Council of Canada. Robert, good to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So listen, you are already on record as saying that this budget discourages business investment. And this comes at a time when this country continues to struggle, and perhaps more so than ever before, with the issue of productivity. So break that down for us. How does it exactly discourage business investment? Is this all about the capital gains tax?
Yes. What we need at this moment is more investment, more business investment for us to be more productive in the economy, to raise wages, to raise living standards. And what we have structurally as a problem is those investments. And so when you tax capital, as they did yesterday, you make those investments less likely. People less likely to take risks, to be entrepreneurial, to be innovators, to want to have businesses and grow their businesses. So it's a bad signal at a moment where we need business investments.
Yeah, and to break that down a little bit, because business leaders, think tanks, we
Yes.
always use the term productivity, but ultimately it is what you talked about, a standard of living, making sure that the next generation is not poorer than the current generation.
Exactly. It's at the core of the social contract that we have as a country. So to produce more with less effort, that's being more productive, and that's how you grow an economy. And in Canada, we've had this structural problem for a long time, and so we need more innovation, we need more capital being invested. You need a climate investment that is conducive of capital formation. And so unfortunately, measures like today, like yesterday, in the budget won't help.
Okay, except that when you hear it from the government, and it's in their budget document, it's in the interviews that they're giving, they say that this capital gains tax, its newly stated inclusion rate, that it's going to affect less than 1% of Canadians. In fact, they say it will only affect 0.13% of Canadians. So how can this one policy have such a chilling effect when the people affected by it is such a minority in terms of a raw number?
I'm not fond of the class war rhetoric from politicians. What is important is each dollar wanting to be invested in the economy is an important one for Canadians. At the end, this is what matters for their wages, for their living standards. If people don't invest in the Canadian economy, we won't be able to pay for all the things that we have, the social programs that we cherish. So as governments, as policymakers, we want to encourage investments. We want to make the private sector a partner in growing this country forward and moving this country forward.
So instead of a capital gains tax and expanding its inclusion, because that's essentially what we're talking about here, what would you have liked to have seen instead? Because ultimately, this government still wants to move forward with social programs and is being asked to move on issues like housing, making things more affordable. So what could have been in its place, do you think?
They're going to spend $57 billion over 5 years. The easiest thing that could have been done was spend a bit less. Understanding governments spend money on a regular basis and they need to do things. But what is important is focus on the growth side of the ledger so the government has more revenues to fund what it has to fund. And so you can't keep this imbalance, keep growing a structural deficit that eventually will be paid by future generations. So what you're doing is you're affecting more of your revenues as a government to service your debt. We're going to have 10 cents on every dollar now just affected to pay the interest on our debt. You don't want that number to grow indefinitely, because at one point it constrains you to do what you need to do and the stuff that we need to build as a country. The other thing I will say, I think it's a powerful image. Next year, every dollar that will be collected by Canadians on GST from Canadians will be affected to debt services charge, $54 billion. So that's not a sustainable path going forward. We need more growth, a bit less spending, more controlled spending, so that we can preserve what we cherish as Canadians, and those are the social programs that we're very proud as a country.
And let me put to you what I heard from the finance minister last night, though, because from Chrystia Freeland, she argues that, yes, this is not a balanced budget. Yes, there is no path to balance. But ultimately, what she's more concerned about is what she considers a responsible budget. And in this budget, the Liberals argue that they are investing in Canadians, making the investments that Canadians want, but at the same time, by keeping with their own financial guardrails, eventually getting to deficit spending 1% of GDP, they're giving certainty to the market and maintaining Canada's AAA credit rating. So to her, what is in front of Parliament right now is already responsible without necessarily creating the cuts that you're talking about.
I think a tax and spend budget in a shell game kind of fiscal framework is not the way that is sustainable for public finances in this country. You want to grow revenue with a strong, dynamic economy. You don't need, not the best way to do this is by raising taxes on businesses, on people who want to take these risks. And then a structural spending that keeps going higher, again, in the higher interest rate environment that constrain you on whatever else you want to do because you have to service a debt that is growing faster than the economy. That's what people need to understand. And so we're not saying no spending at all. What I'm saying is you have to spend on the stuff that'll make our economy more productive. Of course, you need to help people who need help. That's at the core of who we are as a country. But you have to do it in a much more constrained way that they've been doing in the last 4 or 5 years.
I'm quickly losing time, but I do want to ask you this, because you mentioned the social contract. Is there not a social contract obligation on those who are wealthier than others to pay more, which is essentially the argument of this capital gains tax?
Yeah, but the problem is you're kind of penalizing success. You're saying that making money in a capitalist economy is a bad thing. We need capital, again. We need more of it for our economy to grow, for people to be employed, to benefit from higher wages, higher living standards. If our thinking is economic success is bad, people who are successful with their businesses is a bad thing, as a country, we're going to suffer. We're going to become a poorer country, and I don't think that's what Canadians want.
Robert Asselin, I always appreciate the insights. Thank you for that.
Thank you.